Hey, welcome back. My name is Paul Fritz, and this is Putting on the Fritz 3D Visualization. Today, we are going to add our player into our game. All right, so if you're new and this is the first time you've jumped into this video and you don't know what's going on, that's all right. You can go ahead and catch me here at Putting on the Fritz 3D Visualization and subscribe to it so you can get caught up. And I also have lots of other content on there as well for 3D modeling, animation, and some other video games that we've designed in Unreal Engine. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on here with our game. Okay, where we left off was we had just finished putting our textures onto our play area. Okay, so we got that started. I'm going to go ahead and close some few things up here right now. We don't need them for the moment. I'm going to close these two materials. We do need project settings, so if you have project settings closed, let's go ahead and go to Edit and Project Settings and open up Project Settings, okay? And it's taking me back to my default, and that's okay. That's where we need to be anyway. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and first we need to create our input for our character, okay? Unreal Engine doesn't typically come with inputs unless you picked one of the templates. This particular template had none. So we're going to have to go in. So right here, underneath Project, Game, Engine, all the way down to here, there's this one called Input, okay? So if you click on Input, you start getting this right here, okay? And what we need to do is we need to add in some abilities for us to control our player. Now, what I told you at the very beginning was we're going to be able to move our character forward and backwards, but left and right is going to be controlled by the direction that we look. So when we look a certain direction and we move forward, that's the direction we'll go, or we move backwards, we'll go opposite that direction. And we're also going to have the ability to stop. So that means we need to add in all of those functions here first, okay? So the first thing is we're going to need to stop, although we haven't started moving it, but we're just going to start here at the top. Action mappings and axis mappings, okay? These are different things that, or different ways of controlling input into our game, okay? So action mappings, if we hit the little plus button right here and hit the down arrow next to it once that pops up, we'll get our first one right here, okay? And we're going to name this one Stop, okay? And this one we're going to control, so if you hit enter, it'll just pop up down there, or you hit the little plus button right there, and you'll get this next level down here. So this is where now it's asking for our input, right? So I can do a select key value, and I'm going to hit the space bar, okay? So when I do that, I automatically told it I want to use the space bar. Another way to do that is hit the down arrow and find it down in this. You can also type in space bar, but it's usually under your keyboard, of course, in the space bar, right? So pretty cool. You can just do it that way. All right. So that's going to be our stop function. Is going to be the space bar. Now the axis mappings. These are things that basically work off of our input from things like our mouse or directions that we want to put into. So an axis direction using our keyboard. Okay. So again, hit the plus button right here. Okay. And when you do that, you get the little arrow next to it. Okay. The first one we're going to put in is our move forward and backwards is how I called it. So we'll call it that here, move forwards and backwards. All right, and we're going to go ahead and hit the little plus button there twice because we're going to have a forward ability and a backwards ability. So typically forward is W. So again, if we select a key value, I'm going to click on the little keyboard and hit W. We got the W key. And for the backwards, I'm going to select the keyboard again and hit S to move backwards. Now, because these are going to be in a direction and we're applying a scale input to it, we're going to want to make the backwards a -1. Okay, so there we go. All right, now we need to go up here and we need to add another axis mapping. So hit the plus button again. And this time it's going to be, we're going to call this mouse. I'm going to call this a mouse. I'll call it left and right. because that's kind of how we're going to be able to move, I guess. And this is actually going to be a mouse input. So if I hit the down arrow, I'm going to select mouse, okay? And we're going to want mouse X, all right? And we're going to leave that alone at 1 there. And so now we've got our inputs set up for our game. All right. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to jump back in and we're going to create our player now. So now we got our inputs. Of course, players that are a lot more complicated are going to have a lot more inputs than this, especially if you allow them to pick things up, drop things, and all that such. But for this game, simple move forward and backwards will work. And it'll actually kind of add some interest to the game, I think. All right, so at this point, I think we can close our project settings tab. And I still have bridge open because we are going to use it to find a material that we want to place onto our player. All right, so now the thing we're going to do is we're going to go down here to the bottom to content drawer. And we're going to go back up to our very top folder, so all the way to content. In here, we're going to add a new folder. We're going to right click. We're going to go to new folder, and we're going to call this blueprints. Okay. And then inside of blueprints, we're going to double click on that. And we're going to right click, we're going to create another new folder, and we're going to call this pawns. Okay. Pawns are typically something that is controlled by input. In this case, it's going to be controlled by the player input. We're going to double click that. We're going to right click on the empty space again, and we're going to go to blueprint class. Okay. And again, this is going to be our pawn. You see there's one that's called character here, but we're not going to, this is a specific type of player. We're going to have one that is, a pawn is an actor that can be possessed and receive input from a controller. That's what we want. Some other things we're going to put in this game are going to be actors. These are things that can be placed or spawned in the world, and they can be set up to do things using blueprints, but they're not going to be controlled by a player. So let's go ahead and select pawn, okay? And we're going to call this BP underscore player. Okay, and let's call this my player. That way it stands out. And I'll show you why we did that here in a few minutes. Or maybe in the next video when we actually get it more set up. Let's see how far we get in this one. Okay, so now, now what we want to do is go ahead and double click on this and open it up. All right. And the first things we're going to want to do is actually create our player. Okay. So up over here on the left hand side, you see we have a lot of stuff going on in here, and we'll cover some of the stuff as we go along. Over here on the left hand side where it says BP My Player, right above that there's this little plus button. We're going to click the plus button and we're going to add a static mesh. And you can type it to search it, but it also happens to be right here, okay, this little building block looking thing. We're going to click on that, and we're going to call this player. All right. Now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to make it the player. We're going to pick a static mesh over here. If we hit the down arrow, we're going to want to see if we can search for sphere and see if it comes up. If not, we're going to have to do something different. Okay, and I don't see, let's see here. Is it this one? Nope, it's not that one. It should be just plain old sphere. Where are you? Is it material sphere? No, it's not material sphere. Oh, there we go. It should be basic shape spheres. Why are you not coming up here? Static mesh. Sphere, there it is. Static mesh. That's all the way down at the bottom. Crazy. Okay, so here it is. We're going to select just one of those spheres. Okay. Now we've given it a shape. We don't have a material assigned to it yet. We'll come back to that in just a second. Now, if we kind of zoom in, it's kind of hard to see because when we first created this, there's this thing called a default scene root. The default scene root is this kind of little tiny icon that's down here in the bottom and allows you to control the player itself, right? And I'm kind of having some problems here. There we go. Okay. and it's kind of difficult to see because the scene route's over the top of it. Sometimes you leave this in if you want to be able to manipulate, control, and rotate the way the actor is situated in this blueprint. But you want to do that first before you do the next thing we're about to do, which is take this player, and we're going to drag it up, and we're going to drop it on top of default scene route, and now it's going to be your scene route. And the reason why I said this, and I'll show you real quick, I hit Control Z. Over here are transforms. See how we have all of our transforms? But once we move this player, we put it up there, all of that goes away except for scale. We can scale it from there. Okay, and there we go. Okay, that is our player, as exciting as it looks. All right, so the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to also need to give some additional functionality to this player. And up here at the top, we're going to go back to add. We're going to have the player selected, and we're going to click add, and we're going to type in spring. Okay, and we want spring arm. Okay, and what that is that's going to be the thing that controls our camera in the scene. Okay, you see this little red thing that popped out the back there. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to put a camera in the scene as well. So with the spring arm selected, we're going to go ahead and type in camera up here. Oops, my bad. We're going to want to have the player selected, spring arm selected. We're going to hit add. There we go. Now we're going to type in camera. And we want just a regular camera. Okay, not the cinema camera. All right, so now let's go ahead and take a look, see how everything's all set up. Okay. And we can see that the camera and the spring arm are very small. They're right back here at the very back of everything. So we're going to make some adjustments on all of these, okay? The target length, I'm going to leave it 300. Wow, my sphere is very large. That might be part of the problem here. Let me change this sphere out with the other sphere, because that might be what's happening here. So if your sphere is not as big as mine, and I'm not sure why it's so large in the scene, it shouldn't be this big. Let me try the other one. There we go. So the top one was the one we wanted. And scale doesn't really matter because the scale size is a unit of 1 relative to whatever that character size was. So that's why it was really messing me up. All right, so now we should have the small sphere and we should have the camera located here. So for the spring arm, what we're going to do is we're going to click back on the spring arm, okay, and we want to change a couple things here in the spring arm. This is the target length, so this is what determines how far the camera is held behind the object or player. So if we change this, and I'll just hover over it and left mouse click, and you can see if I change it, it changes the length that the camera is, right? I'm going to want to keep this at 300. And then what I do want to change though is I want to change the socket offset over here on this camera to kind of give me a different view. So I'm going to go up to about 108 or so, I think. Maybe even 110, just to make it an even number. Okay, and that's going to put it so that my camera is looking straight up over the top of my player. And I'm going to use the pawn to control rotation. So right here, we're going to click on this. We're going to uncheck inherent roll because we only want the yaw. And what else are we going to need on this spring arm? Okay, I think that's just about it. Everything else we're going to leave at default, okay? All right, so now we've got that started. Let's go ahead and click on the camera and see if there's anything I need to modify on the camera. Let's see here. I think I did change the rotation on the camera down to -10 degrees to give it sort of a downward look just a little bit, so we can kind of see our ball a little bit better, our sphere a little bit better. And at this point, I think that's all there was. We may have to come back in and make a couple modifications. Oh, there is one hugely important thing we need to do, and that is back on our spring arm. Okay, so right now, if we were to instantiate this into our game and we hit play, the camera would actually roll with the ball. So as the ball rotated, the camera would stay fixed and would roll around like this, and that would really probably make any player get a little bit of motion sickness after a while. So if we take a look over here, when we take a look at our transform, we can see that there's different methods of the way these transforms will work. We want to select world, and when we select world, so it'll stay relative to the position of the world and not to the player. So it'll be absolute rotation is what it's reading there. Okay, let's go ahead and compile and save what we have. And let me see where we are with our video. All right, so now we've got our character basically set up. The last thing I want to do before we call it on this one is go back to the player, and let's find our material real quick. So I'm going to grab this players tab. I'm going to put it back up here. I'm going to go to bridge. I'm going to find something that's kind of interesting to make my player out of, and maybe something like a metal, maybe I'll just kind of make it look a little scratched and roughed up. Maybe I might change this later, but I'm just going to show you the process again. We're going to click on that. Okay, I'm going to download it into there. I'm going to select it. I'm going to go back to my player. I'm just going to click, drag, and drop this into my default material for my player. And there we go. Now we have my player with this particular material on it. Don't know how it's going to look until we put it in the game, and we can always come back and change it later on. I'm going to click it, drag it, compile everything, save all, and that is going to be it for this video. I want to keep them, like I said, around 15 minutes, 20 minutes max. Right now we're right around 17. So the next video, we're actually going to jump into it, and we're going to make the blueprint so that we can get this player moving around inside of our game, and we're also going to set it up so that our player will instantiate when we hit the play button. All right, so again, hopefully I'll see you in the next video, and subscribe if you like what you saw. See you next time.